and it worked. Eventually, we're talking months, okay? Assuming that running for 1 mile without stopping is a goal for you if you've clicked on this video, I'm going to get into detail as to how I managed to achieve that. The reason I think you should hear this story from me is because I am not an athlete, a coach, a PT. I am not naturally athletic. I haven't been running since I was a kid. I started at 230 pounds, unable to run for more than 30 seconds at a time. I was morbidly obese and I couldn't even manage the program Couch to 5k. It was too hard for me to get through. I started in a place where I could run for 30 seconds and that was it. I was completely bent over forward, out of breath, legs hurting, and I actually ended up becoming an ultra marathoner, running my first 50k run last year in June. It actually was the hottest day of the year as well, which I didn't know was going to happen. But my story today isn't going to be how I ended up running 50k. My story is going to be how I ran my first ever solid non-stop mile. When I very first started, I found it very hard to envision myself running non-stop. I would look online and try and find people who I could relate to. Someone who had been in the position I was in at the time and managed to get themselves running non-stop for the mile, let's say. The people that I came across online, they were just starting, but they were running for way longer than I could. There was nobody online that was showing themselves, that I could find anyway at the time, that was showing themselves only being able to run for a matter of seconds. And if I'm being really honest, at the beginning, even getting to those 30 seconds was a nightmare. Sometimes I couldn't even get to the 30 seconds. It would be an absolute force to get myself to the 25-second mark and I'd have to give up there. I couldn't even manage 5 more seconds to get to 30 seconds. One of the changes I made was up here. Now I know it's very, very easy to find people who have the time in the day, who have the mental strength, who have the confidence, who believe in themselves, who can tell you it's all up here, it's a mental battle, it's not physical. Well, I can tell you from experience that it is a mental battle, but it is just as much a physical battle. When I was at that stage, my body physically would not be able to do more. It didn't matter if I told myself I could run for 4 hours straight. It's just my mental state, because my body physically couldn't do it. I'd never ever done it before in my life. I was 29 years old at the time. I'd never done it before in my life, so just trying to convince myself that I could wasn't going to happen. I had to slowly build myself up. I started by actually telling myself that I can do this. I have a husband who is the fittest person I know. He has completed an Ironman, ran 2 100-mile races, one of which he came second place, ran multiple ultra marathons, multiple marathons. He has speed, endurance, and he has mental strength. And because that was the person I was around who was achieving these running goals, who was getting out there and running, I convinced myself that that's the type of person you need to be a runner. But that's not the case. I could achieve just as much as he can. It's just the difference is his level was higher than mine. I used to feel embarrassed and ashamed at the level I was at, and that is where I changed my mindset. That is where the mental strength comes into play. Once I'd given myself the confidence to give it a go and be kind to myself about where I was starting from, instead of saying I'm starting at running it for 30 seconds and not being able to run anymore, I decided that's not a failure, that's just my start. That's my starting point. And if I can end up getting to 1 mile solid non-stop, it's gonna feel even better than the people I was finding who was just starting running and they would go and just do a 5k off the bat as their first run. Now, I did have a treadmill at home at the time and that really, really helped me. I don't have the treadmill anymore. At the time, I had the treadmill and my husband was away. He's in the army, so he does go away quite often for long periods of time. And at the time, February 2020, he was posted away, he was abroad, and I would get on the treadmill and I would just walk. For me, I knew I just needed to get my body used to moving. I went from the literal couch, from zero, nothing, and I just needed to get my body moving. And I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked for as long as I could on that treadmill in the evenings. At the time, I think my daughter was about 2 years old, and I have a husky as well still. I had those two to be responsible for throughout the day, and then in the evening when my daughter was in bed, that was my time, that was my me time. And I turned my me time from watching telly on the sofa to walking on the treadmill. I just walked for probably about 3 weeks. I think it wasn't every single night, but it was probably averaged out to be about 5 nights out of 7 I was walking on that treadmill. I would walk anywhere between 30 minutes to 60 minutes. And then eventually I decided to add some runs in. Now what I did there was I walked for 5 minutes to warm myself up, and then I would attempt to run. And that is where I found out that I couldn't really do more than 30 seconds at that time. And I clocked that, made a mental note of it, and then I walked. Tried to run again after a couple minutes once I tried to calm myself down, got my breath back. So I've got on the treadmill, walked for 5 minutes to warm up, ran for 30 seconds. I'm now walking again, really out of breath, like really out of breath. I don't feel like I'm ever going to be able to breathe properly again, out of breath. And then once I felt like, okay, I can kind of feel my breath coming back, I tried again and I couldn't manage it. I probably would have managed about 15 seconds. That's when I needed to be kind to myself. That's when I shouldn't have beaten myself up, and I didn't. And I'm very grateful that I was kind to myself, because from then on, I decided to clock how long does it actually take for me to feel recovered from those 30 seconds. And I waited, and I would run another 30 seconds and get myself back to where I was, that really out of breath, can't breathe situation. Realised that it was 9 minutes when I finally felt like I was back to that normal state. I stuck to 30 minutes of running, 9 minutes of walking. That was my ratio, and I stuck to that. And eventually, over time, it went from 30 seconds of running to 7 minutes of walking. I was looking online, I would see those kind of intervals. People would be running for 30 seconds or running for a minute, walking for a minute. It was very close, but for me, I was that unfit and had to make it extreme, and it worked. I was doing intervals pretty much the whole time. What I would end up doing is 5 or 6 nights out of the week, I would be on that treadmill, and about 1 or 2 of those would be just solid walking between 30 and 60 minutes, and the rest of the time is intervals. Anytime I would run, it would be intervals. I managed to get to the point where I could push to 40 seconds. Eventually I got to a minute. Now in the end, I didn't clock how long it took me to recover. I just walked until I felt better. And what happened was I started to be able to run for longer, and I celebrated every single time I could push further, even if it was 1 second longer than the week before. That was a celebration. I cheered myself on, and I wasn't embarrassed at the fact that I was celebrating for running for an extra 1 second, because that 1 second meant so much, and I worked so hard to achieve that. I truly believe that giving myself the realistic 9 minutes or 7 minutes to recover in those walks in between was the game changer for me. When I tried to run in the past, my recovery time was way shorter, and I didn't give myself enough time, and I just burnt myself out, and I wasn't able to maintain it. Eventually though, my recovery times were coming down, so I got it down from 9, got it down to 7, and eventually, we're talking months, okay? I ended up being able to run 1 minute of running, 1 minute of walking. I would do that 10 minutes at a time. After I ended up being able to achieve 1 minute on, 1 minute off for an extended period of time, I then made it so I was running for 1.5 minutes with a minute recovery. I would try and do this same system, 1.5 minutes, minute recovery for 10 minutes, 12 minutes, however long, get off, stretch, keep going. And it was intervals, intervals, intervals every single time, because at the end of the day, I couldn't run non-stop for a long period of time. So my only choice was intervals. And when I've been training intervals in the past, it has helped me with my endurance. I know how important intervals are. I hate them. They're very, very hard to do, but they are so good for your running. They're the reason that I even managed to become a runner in the first place. I managed to work my way up to be able to run for 5 minutes non-stop, and then I can't remember what the recovery was at the time, but just maintained the I know my body and I know when I can go again. So as soon as I felt like I was ready to go again and I could do another 5 minutes, I'd do another 5 minutes. This process of basically interval training started in the February of 2020, where I was walking the whole time, and I managed to run my very first mile non-stop. I can't remember exactly the date, but I remember it was roughly in the October. So from February to October, all that hard work led me to run my non-stop mile. I remember to this day running that mile. I remember putting the treadmill on, getting on there and starting my run, and I went through all of the emotions, watching those minutes tick by and watching the treadmill not moving quick enough towards a mile. Really pushed myself, and the closer I got, the more I egged myself on and I cheered myself on. And once it clicked over to that 1 mile, I paused that treadmill straight away and I just jumped off it and I burst into tears. I think that 1 mile non-stop was one of those definitive moments, one of those moments that I've got in the bank, and I will pull that out when I need to remember how good running makes you feel. Like, it's that one thing that's what you put in, you will get out, and I proved that to myself, and that was one of my biggest achievements, running that non-stop mile. It really was. It gave me such confidence. It proved to me that I was right to believe in myself. I had spent a lot of my life previously doubting myself, and then you kind of like look for things to validate why you feel like that. And if I doubted myself in the beginning and then I couldn't run for 30 seconds, that would have been my validation to, this isn't for you. Like, running isn't for everyone. No, running is for whoever wants it. Don't you dare think that you're not worth the hard work. Don't you for a second convince yourself that because this isn't your full-time job, because you're not an athlete, because you're not a pro, because this doesn't come naturally to you, whatever it is, just because you're an average, everyday person who's doubting themselves, do not ever think that you are not worth the effort. There were times where I convinced myself that I shouldn't be putting so much time and effort into this. This is silly. I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I shouldn't be out here doing this. But no, I was worth it. I was worth putting that time and effort in. After running that first solid non-stop mile, it completely changed everything for me, and it secured that belief in myself. And I truly believe that even if every single person on this planet was rooting for you and believed in you, it would mean absolutely nothing compared to what you could do when you believe in you. I really hope that I can edit this together so it can make sense. I feel like I may have just babbled it all out. But if you haven't already and you are new to my channel, have a look at some of my videos. I really try and make the content that I needed to see way back then. I'm an average everyday person and I'm going out there and I'm getting the hard things done, and I think it's very easy to find inspirational people. But I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I work, have a lot going on, I have to move regular, I'm on my own a lot, but I'm still going out there and I'm still getting it done, and I have constantly am having to convince myself that I can do it and I am worthy of going out there and doing it as well. So if you need to see an everyday person who is getting out there and trying her best, then make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Give this video a like if you did enjoy, guys, and yeah, I'll see you soon for some more updates. Bye, guys.